Yo, what's going on guys, it is Fox United here. Welcome back to a brand new video for you guys today here on the channel. Today we're going to be ranking Lewis Hamilton's 6 Formula 1 World Championships in this video. Now I've taken inspiration from the race. Now I'll leave a link to the description down below to go and check out their channel. Basically, they went ahead and did a ranking video on Michael Schumacher's 7 Formula 1 World Championships. And I thought it was a really good idea and I kind of wanted to do something like this. So I've basically taken the video, but I've decided to rank Lewis Hamilton's championships instead. With Lewis Hamilton being my favourite Formula 1 driver, I thought it was cool that I went ahead and personally ranked how I thought his World Championships were, best from worst. So in today's video, we're going to do that. So let's get straight into Championship number 6. So coming in at number 6 then is going to be the 2015 Formula 1 season. 2015 was a dominant season for Lewis Hamilton. He managed to acquire himself 11 pole positions and secured 10 race wins. He only retired once during the entire season, which was at the Singapore Grand Prix, and only 2 races where he was off the podium, being Singapore and then also the Hungarian Grand Prix. Apart from that, Lewis Hamilton was on the podium in every single other race, with firsts and seconds across the board, and just 1 third place being at Monaco after he was screwed over by his team for their strategy error. We all remember that Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton didn't really have that much competition. He was much better than Nico Rosberg throughout the entirety of the season. And before we got to the final 3 races of the season, Lewis Hamilton had won 10 Grand Prix, Rosberg had won 3, and Vettel had won 3. It really wasn't a contest in this season. There was the rise in form from Ferrari having a slightly better car compared to 2014, or a much better car, but they really weren't in contention throughout the entirety of the season, picking up the odd win here or there, being at Malaysia, Hungary, and then also at Singapore. For me, Lewis Hamilton just had a very easy ride, and there wasn't really much else to say for him in that season, apart from he absolutely dominated it. Coming in then at number 5, we have gone with the 2014 Formula 1 Championship. Formula 1 rocked with brand new rules and regulations for the 2014 season, being the brand new turbo hybrid era and also the controversial front nose designs, which on the majority of the cars was absolutely disgusting, but for the Mercedes it actually looked like a very good car. In this season, Lewis Hamilton only managed to secure 7 pole positions, but he managed to get himself 11 race wins, and that is his tied to the record as the most race wins in a season. During the season, he did suffer a few more retirements, suffering 3 retirements in the season, but every single time Lewis Hamilton finished a Grand Prix, he finished it on the podium, which is a very strong record for Lewis Hamilton. There really wasn't much for Lewis Hamilton to deal with in the 2014 season, but comparing it to 2014 to 2015, he had to come from behind a lot more often, whereas in 2015, he never had to. Nico Rosberg won the first race of the season in Australia, and then Lewis Hamilton went on a streak of 4 race wins in a row to take the championship lead. He then lost it again when Rosberg beat him in Monaco, and then Hamilton DNF'd in that crazy Canadian Grand Prix. But Lewis Hamilton then went on a string of a massive string from the Italian Grand Prix all the way up to the final race in Abu Dhabi. He won all of those races, bar the Brazilian Grand Prix where he finished 2nd. Probably could have won it if he didn't spin. But Lewis Hamilton just was more consistent throughout the season than Nico Rosberg, and just had to deal with the fact that he had a few more retirements than Nico during the season. Moving on then to number 4, and I have gone with the 2017 Formula 1 World Championship. This one's probably a little bit of a controversial one to put this one so low down the order, but there's a kind of a reason why, and I think it'll be explained when I start to explain the other championships that come into play. But the Mercedes managed to retain their championship for a 4th consecutive year with the Mercedes W08, where we had our 2nd set of major regulation changes being with the cars itself being much wider and new front wings, new rear wings, and also those shark fins. By the way, those shark fins, I miss them to pieces. I hope they came back. But yes, Lewis Hamilton in this season secured himself 11 pole positions, but only 9 race victories in this season, so actually scored less victories than he did podium places. There was obviously the major resurgence of Ferrari throughout this season, as they were a much stronger and competitive car and really gave Mercedes a run for their money. Red Bull was sort of there and thereabouts, but they really didn't pose that much of a threat. It was mainly down to Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton versus Sebastian Vettel was the key for this season. But for Lewis Hamilton, it seemed like he just about had it in the bag versus Sebastian Vettel. Similar to 2014, Lewis Hamilton went on a string of performances which really settled it. From Belgium to USA, Lewis Hamilton secured 5 race victories and 1 second place finish, being at Malaysia after Max Verstappen managed to claw the race victory. Overall, the Mercedes-Benz was much quicker in a straight line than the Ferrari. The Ferrari had the edge throughout the corners, but with Ferrari's reliability problems coming into their own, Mercedes were able to capitalize. I think it probably would have been higher up my list if Ferrari didn't have their major reliability issues, but Lewis Hamilton really just kicked into another gear after the summer break, and Sebastian Vettel really couldn't handle the performances of Lewis Hamilton. Of course, like I said, he had a few issues here or there, but really Lewis Hamilton just seemed to have it all under control. It just took Mercedes a little bit longer to really understand their W08, as they initially called it the Diva, but of course it managed to go ahead and be the Dominator, I guess. Weird name for it, but yeah. Number 4 is 2017. Moving on then to the next spot, number 3, I have picked the 2019 Formula 1 World Championship, the latest in the Formula 1 season. Lewis Hamilton secured only 5 pole positions in Formula 1 last season, but he managed to rack up an equaling 11 race victories, being his equal most throughout a Formula 1 season. He secured no DNFs at all during that season, and out of the 21 Grand Prix that we had, Lewis Hamilton managed to get a podium in 17 of them. That's an astounding record for Lewis Hamilton throughout the entirety of that season. Why I picked this one to be so high up on the list is probably going to be some that will be a bit controversial about this. Of course, Lewis Hamilton had a phenomenal start to the Formula 1 season last year, picking up 6 race victories and 2 second places in the first 8 races. That's an astonishing record for Mercedes, and it was true. Mercedes-Benz were dominant in the first few races of the season, setting a new record for 1-2s at the start of the season. But why did I pick this one to be so high up? There was 2 reasons that I picked this one. First of all, Lewis Hamilton in this season proved that you don't have to start on pole position all the time to be the best. In this season, Lewis Hamilton proved that he was the true all-out racer that we all knew that he was. Out of the 5 pole positions that Lewis Hamilton secured, he only managed to convert 3 of those into race victories, meaning that the other 8 race victories that Lewis Hamilton secured were not from pole position. And for me, that was just an impressive record. In this season, we saw the emergence of Valtteri Bottas 2.0, Max Verstappen, and Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari as well. It was a very, very highly contested season, but what stood out among it all was the fact that Lewis Hamilton was the man that everyone was constantly challenging. Valtteri Bottas challenged Lewis Hamilton at the start of the season, up until around the Monaco Grand Prix. From Canada onwards, he sort of just faded away again, apart from obviously their fight at the British Grand Prix, but he never really had the match for Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen then started to become the next emergent, winning the Austrian Grand Prix and giving Lewis Hamilton a run for his money at the Hungarian Grand Prix. And then Charles Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel hit back at the summer break with the Ferrari's controversial power unit system. But Lewis Hamilton was always the man challenging them. He was the man challenging Bottas in Silverstone. He was the man that gave Verstappen a run for his money, and Mercedes put the strategy right to give him the win. And he was the man that was consistently pressurizing Charles Leclerc at the Italian and Belgian Grand Prix, albeit it didn't work out successfully in either of those races, but he was still the man constantly at the front, and his consistency could not be denied. So for that reason, I have put 2019 at number 3. Coming in at number 2, I have picked the Formula 1 2008 World Championship. This one was very difficult to pick as number 2, but as it explains when I go through number 1, it makes a bit more sense. In 2008, Lewis Hamilton secured 7 pole positions and secured 5 race victories, with 10 out of 18 races in the podium places. Lewis Hamilton secured 98 points in that season, with Felipe Massa securing 97 points, meaning that Hamilton managed to win the World Championship by 1 point, thanks to that last lap, last corner overtake on Timo Glock. But why have I picked this to be number 2 and not number 1? Now, McLaren and Ferrari were very, very close in terms of pace throughout the entirety of the season. The Ferrari cars seemed to be slightly better in the warmer conditions, whereas the McLaren was much better in the slightly cooler conditions and also in the wet weather. It was much, much stronger than the Ferrari. The Ferrari was just very unstable in the wet. In this season, Lewis Hamilton had a lot of times where he was the absolute star man, and then sometimes where it all went to pot, and just made some silly mistakes. Some silly mistakes to start with, you could say from the Canadian Grand Prix when he just drove into the back of Kimi Raikkonen, was a little bit clumsy and just a bit silly from him. Kind of a rookie error, you could say, on that front. But there were some highlights from Lewis Hamilton's season, starting things off with Monaco when he managed to come back after getting a puncture and hitting the barrier to just absolutely dominate and take a brilliant race victory. And then also Silverstone when he absolutely demolished the field in the wet weather, winning by well over a minute and lapping all but the podium place drivers. It was a commanding race victory, but those were the only 2 real race victories where I felt like that was the best from Lewis Hamilton. There was some other moments in there which were pretty impressive, like his comeback drive at the Italian Grand Prix in the wet when he started near the back and managed to fight his way up the field. But apart from that, it was, one of those seasons when McLaren had those great races, Ferrari had the great races, and then, the one team would dip off, the other team would come at them, and then, you had like BMW have a little bit of move in there, Renault with Fernando Alonso secured a few races in there. But apart from that, there just wasn't really any special moments, and that's why number 1 is number 1. And then moving on into number 1, I have picked the 2018 Formula 1 World Championship season. This was the second time that Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel were going to go head-to-head, and in this season, Lewis Hamilton secured 11 pole positions and 11 race victories, securing 17 out of 21 podium places. This season was a very, very highly competitive season between Mercedes and Ferrari, and for me, I will always stand by my judgment, and people can obviously call me out otherwise. I believe in this season that the Ferrari was faster than the Mercedes and was the better car, and to be honest, it should have won that Formula 1 World Championship, but it all fell apart due to team and driver errors consistently. This season was nothing to do with reliability this time around. Of course, we saw in 2017, the reliability problems really cost Ferrari badly. But this time around, there wasn't really any. It was just down to lack of driver error. And for me, I felt like Lewis Hamilton drove probably his strongest ever Formula 1 season. And this season is where we saw some true legendary championship race winning performances. And there was many of them. The first one is the British Grand Prix. Of course, he got hit off at the start of the British Grand Prix by Kimi Raikkonen, but he came back through the field and managed to secure second place in a crazy race. In Germany then, the following rounds, he started down in P14, but he scythed his way through the field, and after the wet weather caught out Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton struck and took a race victory from 14th on the grid. Then I move over to the Italian Grand Prix. In that race, it was a Ferrari front row lockout, and Lewis Hamilton made a brilliant move around the outside of Vettel into the chicane, to the second chicane. Vettel unfortunately spun after that incident. Lewis Hamilton then continuously piled on the pressure to Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen blistered out his tyres, and Hamilton snuck on through and took the race victory. But for me, my most impressive Lewis Hamilton display I think I've ever seen so far has to be the Singapore Grand Prix in 2018. Lewis Hamilton puts in one of the best qualifying laps we've ever seen of a 1:36.0 around Singapore, and then in the race he managed to control that Grand Prix despite a little bit of a scare mid-race with the back markers and Max Verstappen chasing him down, but Lewis Hamilton was just absolutely invincible. From the British Grand Prix to the USA Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton secured 6 victories, 1 second place and a 3rd place after his DNF in Austria. It was a sensational performance, and for me personally, I just feel in this season there were so many standout performances where the team and the driver pushed their car beyond its limits and proved to be the better team over Ferrari in this season. But there we go guys, that is going to be it for this ranking video of Lewis Hamilton's 6 Formula 1 World Championships. Let me know if you would have put them in a different order, and is there any sort of other rankings you want me to do? Maybe get another another multiple world champion and rank them, or maybe something else in Formula 1. Let me know. If you did enjoy the video though, leave a like, subscribe if you're new around here as well, and don't forget to go check out the race. Their link is in the description down below, as of course I've taken inspiration from their video. But until then, I'll see you next time. Take care all. Peace.